Ground as it is in the first service. We're going to go ahead now and take our normal few moments of silence, which of course is designed to make sure that you're ready to study. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to continue to study. We ask that God, the Holy Spirit, would provide for us everything necessary to continue this study, including genuine humility, discipline, and anything else we might need in order to function properly. And we pray in Christ's name. Amen. All right, we're just going to pick it right back up. We're in subpoint 4, so 4 with single parents around it. Underneath, point 5, subpoint B, subpoint 4. Okay? Subpoint 4 says, well, let me give you 3, just get back into it. It says in Genesis 3:16, we also see, however, that the woman will be given an insatiable desire for her husband and that he will rule over her. And I gave you Genesis 3:16. And it says what this means is that the wife is not complete without the husband. She's dependent on her husband for fulfillment, and without her right man, she is incomplete. Subpoint 4 then says, this incompleteness is what Peter is referring to as the weaker vessel. A vessel, by design, is not complete unless it is filled with something. You know, a tea set, for example, right? You know, a tea set's, maybe pretty to look at, but it's not fulfilling its design. It's not functional until it has tea, right? Until there's something in the cups and there's something in the pot, right? What's interesting is Disney. As I was thinking about that, even Disney does that. There's a line from Beauty and the Beast, right? Where they talk about, a server's not complete unless they're serving, or a waiter's not complete unless they're waiting, or something like that, right? That's the whole idea, okay? A vessel's not complete until it's filled. So continue the point. Likewise, the wife is not complete unless she is filled spiritually and fulfilled physically and mentally. And sex, as Peter calls out, is the perfect illustration. Subpoint 5. Note that the weaker vessel implies a stronger vessel. Period. See, it's comparative adjective, right? Weak, weaker, weakest. It's a comparative adjective, which means it's got to be compared against something, right? If something is weaker, that means that there must be something that's less weak or stronger, okay? Continue the point. The man, as the stronger vessel, but is a vessel nonetheless, and he too is incomplete unless he is filled. His filling comes from spiritual maturity. And from his function as the provider, protector, and authority for the woman. See, remember the passage in Genesis tells us that the woman, okay, is going to have pain in childbirth, and but she has an insatiable desire for her husband. The man is going to have to work and toil and protect for the woman, okay? And that's how they have their fulfillment. So point C. So now we're back out. So point C. Ephesians 5, 23 through 33. Gives us more instruction. On the function of the husband and wife relationship. It too tells us that the husband is to be the head of the wife. And he is to love his wife. And she is to respect him. The Apostle Paul is writing that the husband is the head of the family. As Christ is the head of the church. That's Ephesians 5:23. And because of that, the husband is to love his wife quote, as, end quote, and that of course sets up the comparison, as, or in the same way, that Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. Ephesians 5:25. See, so what does that mean that Christ is, the head of the church? The Christ is the husband, right? The idea is that Christ protects us, that Christ, is the one that provides for us. That's how we get the concept of being the provider and the protector. Okay, and Christ does that through, through the love. He can love the believer. Okay, he can't love the unbeliever. He's got to treat the unbeliever with justice, but he can love the believer, right? And protects us. He is our representation before Satan. Just as he is the head, the husband is to be the head. He's to protect the wife. He's to love the wife. He's to provide for the wife. Okay? All of those things that nowadays are considered to be horrible. You know, the joke used to be, we used to tell the example of the guy opening the door for the woman. It's so far past that, it's not even funny anymore. It's gotten to the point where it's past opening the door. It's to the point where you can't have speech that indicates that there's separate genders. But anyway, I'm not going to go down that path. We're going to continue our study here. Continue the point. That means, this is the husband loving the wife. That means the husband has different responsibility in the marriage than the wife does. He is the leader. And he must set the tone for the relationship. See, the idea is the woman's supposed to be the responder, but if there's nothing to respond to, that's how we started this thing. That's how things fail. He has to be the leader. He has to be able to give her something to respond to. He has to function properly and do his job as a man and as a husband. Okay? Continue the point. A man who honors his wife and puts her first before all but God will have a wife that responds. And honor includes respect. Remember, it's respect and the integrity. Honor doesn't mean that you let the wife do whatever she wants to do, right? Because wives are human. They have an old sin nature too. They're going to want to rebel once in a while. They're going to want to do something, that's not right. And the husband has to be the strong enough man to say, no, you can't do that. No. I'm not going to let you go out to the bar with the girls by yourself. Okay? Or whatever. Okay? No, I'm not going to let you do such and such. Okay? That's all part of, and the properly functioning wife says, thank you. Okay, I won't, dear. Thank you. Not, well, we'll see about that. Yeah. I'll show him. Anyway, okay. He honors the wife and she responds. Subpoint D. Which is where we're going, right? Subpoint D, the wife, as a responder, is to respond and obey her husband, period. And again, those are almost fighting words in today's day and age, right? You won't find this taught this way anymore in many of the traditional churches. The classic example is the Methodist Church, right? The Methodist Church was one of the first to accept gay marriage. The Methodist Church is one of the first that's destroying marriage, period. And they have women pastors, and they have women who can do everything, right? And so they won't say this. But God designed the woman's soul to be a responder soul. It doesn't make her less of a person. It doesn't make her stupider. It doesn't make her anything less, than the man. It's different. That's all. And the problem is they have taught in society that being different is being less, and that's not the case. Okay? But the wife, as a responder, is to respect and obey her husband, period. The wife who refuses to respond or who refuses to submit will destroy the marriage, period. And you can write that word out in capital letters, period. Okay. Just the conflict alone that is generated in the house when the woman refuses to obey the husband. If you have a husband who's acting like a husband and is a man, okay, there is going to be conflict, and that conflict is going to destroy the marriage. They're not functioning properly. The other side of it is the man who refuses to lead is also going to destroy the marriage. But anyway, continue. Husbands are to dwell with their wives with understanding, but if the husband lacks knowledge, this is going to be a run-on sentence, and I understand it, so put up with it, please. Husbands are to dwell with their wives with understanding, but if the husband lacks knowledge on how to do this, because the wife, comma, who is not being fulfilled, comma, tells them that they're fine, then the marriage won't function properly and may fail. Wives, as the weaker vessel, and responders, should not be afraid to let their husbands know what is too much for her. See, so the idea is that you can have a woman who fails to respond for two different reasons. One is she is arrogant and she refuses to respond because she doesn't want to be the weaker vessel, because she doesn't want to allow this man to dominate her type of thing, right? And that's the first thing that we're talking about, the I'll show you type of thing. Okay. The other is that you have the woman who doesn't want to, who doesn't respond properly because she thinks she's responding properly by not saying anything. She has problems. She would like her husband to do something different, and she doesn't say anything. And the husband, who he doesn't know, he's not a mind reader. Okay, how's he supposed to know? And that's from everything from the physical, the physical union that they have, as well as everything else in the marriage. If he is trying to take the family in a direction that she doesn't understand or she doesn't like, and yet she doesn't say anything and he doesn't know it, how as a leader is he supposed to get that information so that he can perhaps modify his plan? See, leaders will listen to the people underneath them in authority, their subordinates. A good leader will always listen to the subordinate. Doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to change the plan. It may mean that he has to explain something to the subordinate a little bit differently. Okay, but if you have a leader who won't listen to the people that are subordinates, then that person is a bad leader. Well, a good husband wants to be a good husband. A properly functioning husband is going to want to function properly. Okay, and he's going to have to learn. This is knowledge. Knowledge means that it's learned. You don't have it. It's not ingrained when you're born. Right? It's information that you get. So you learn about right man, right woman. God brings you a right woman. You get married, and now you're a husband. You're protecting her. You're trying to function, and okay, you're doing something that she doesn't say anything about, and instead, she lets it fester. She lets it grow, and now she's malfunctioning. And then the next thing you know, the marriage is in trouble. When all she had to say is, honey, you know what? I really don't think we should get that car, for example. Make it something easy. Okay? It probably makes more sense if we do this. What do you think? And then he can say, oh, you know what? You're probably right. Maybe we should, since we have kids, maybe, buying that convertible two-seater probably wasn't the right thing right now. I really like it, but, maybe that's not the right thing to do. Good call. Okay? Let's change that. But she didn't say anything, so he buys a two-seater, right? And then she hates it. And then all of a sudden, what happens? 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, 2 months, whatever, down the road, something else goes off, and it's like, well, if you hadn't bought that dang car, right? Blah, 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 right? So it's the communication that's needed. Now, that doesn't mean, in this, just like everything else, there's that very, very fine straight line. This doesn't mean that the woman, okay, opens up her soul entirely to her husband. She's not supposed to give up her privacy. She doesn't have to do that, because we do have angels that are listening, and those angels are not always good angels. We have demons. We have things that are listening, right? And if a woman is constantly talking about what makes her, what makes her upset, or what she can't handle, then there's clues for the demons that they can go say, hey, all we got to do is keep attacking this woman on these things, and she's going to fail. Okay, so you don't have to destroy your privacy, but on things that when you're working together as partners, as a husband and a wife, the one under authority has every right to say something. And the one in authority, the man, has the right to listen. And he will listen if he's a good husband. Doesn't mean, like I said, he'll change. There may be other reasons. Gee, I don't think we should get that. No, I'm getting it because of this, 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 and this. Oh, okay. Right? But the woman that doesn't speak, see, that's the problem with going too far on this. You have people that say, okay, the woman's supposed to be under the authority of the man, so, sit down, shut up, and color, right? Don't say anything. I'm the head of the household. I'll do what I want, and you're going to follow me. No, that's not the honor that the man is supposed to give to the woman. That's not the honor and respect. Okay? And the woman can't respond to a man who functions like that. And he's supposed to honor her, and she's supposed to respect him, and that won't work if you don't have that kind of communication. And in the area that we're in, that's the same thing with physical. Honey, I don't like when you do such and such, or I do like when you do such and such. Do less of that and more of this, or whatever. But we've put such a stigma on that kind of relationship that those things don't happen. And Christians in particular are afraid to talk about those kinds of things. But it's knowledge. Peter tells us it's knowledge and with the way you're supposed to dwell with your wife. And that knowledge comes from the communication. Okay? Continue the point. Husband and wife are designed to work together and lift each other up. This does not mean that the woman needs to give up her privacy and reveal all to her husband and the listening demons but it does mean that she responds to her husband's authority and when he asks her questions, she answers them honestly. See, and that's how you grow. That's the comfort level. That's what a man and a woman are supposed to have. When the man asks the question, okay, the woman can either say, you probably shouldn't ask that question because it's, if I say something that's not going to be, good, because the demons will hear it, or here's my answer. But too many women, when asked the question, if they've been taught that they have to be the weaker vessel, they have to be under authority, the husband will ask the question and I'll be like, whatever you say, dear. No, it's okay, honey. When she hates it, right? Or when she has a better opinion and she knows it's a better opinion, but she doesn't want to say it and offend her husband. A properly functioning husband's not going to be offended when she says that. Okay, that's the kind of knowledge. That's the knowledge Peter's talking about. And the proper relationship between the weaker vessel and the stronger vessel. Subpoint E. The Bible clearly tells us that the soul of the woman is different than that of the man, period. The wife's soul is designed as a responder, and the man's soul is designed as an initiator. Genesis 3:16 compared with Ephesians 5:33. Genesis 3:16 compared with Ephesians 5:33. See, God doesn't have neuter souls, right? That he then has, he has, physical, male physical bodies and female physical bodies, and then just start sprinkling souls in. And the soul that hits a male body becomes a male soul, and the soul that hits female body becomes a female soul. It doesn't work that way. God is smart enough, considering he's omniscient, God is smart enough to have created the right amount of male souls for male bodies and female souls for female bodies. Okay? And he's not going to go, oh, darn, I've got this leftover female body and this male soul. I'll just put them together. Nobody will ever notice. Okay? It doesn't happen that way. And they're created differently for those reasons that I just have been stating for the last half hour. Continue the point, and I'm going to give you some more. The woman is designed to bear up under physical pain. And the man is designed with a desire to lead. Period. See, every society has some form of ritual or some form of understanding of boys becoming men. And it usually involves some form of physical challenge. And whether our society wants to admit it or not, you know, back in the day, you used to have boys that would fight on the playgrounds, boys that would be bullies. Boys, that was to try. That's because boys, the soul of the boy was to lead. The soul of the boy was to be the leader. You put a bunch of boys together and they're going to fight for who's going to be dominant, who's going to be the leader. Right? And nowadays we call it bullying, and we you know, we don't let boys have any kind of outlet for that kind of behavior. And so then they go and they grab guns and they shoot up schools, or they do dumb stuff like that because their souls are frustrated. Okay, doesn't mean you put boys together just so you can beat the snot out of each other. But what it does mean is you have to understand that, like they used to say, boys will be boys. To a point. Okay, because their souls are that way. I continue the point. Even today's science has determined that the souls are different. Although many in today's culture refuse to believe it. Of course, when they're studying it, they're studying the brain, right, which is the format soul. You can't study the soul, and they wouldn't believe in a soul. You know, a liberal scientist isn't going to believe in a soul anyway, right? You know, but they do believe in the brain, and so when they study the brain, guess what? They're getting a look into the soul. Okay, continue the point. Brain scans, comma. Controlled studies, comma. Evolutionary psychology. Have demonstrated that men and women are not the same. Here are some of the findings of research, colon. So point one, men and women don't see in the same way. Semicolon. Their retinas are different. Period. So I thought that was kind of interesting when I found that out. Because what that's saying is that the eyes of the woman are different than the eyes of the man. Okay, and the eyes, the windows of the soul, right? The eyes give you some of the information that go into the soul, into the brain, therefore go into the soul. So God not only thought about the fact that the souls are going to be different, he changed the senses so that the stimulus coming to the souls is also different. To me, that was like, wow. That's really cool. He knew that the souls are going to be different, and he also has different interfaces to these. You know, speaking electrical engineering, right? He's you know, he's got different interfaces to the soul for these women because they're getting different kinds of information. And I don't know if you've ever seen. There was a Nova show that demonstrated this. One of the things they did is they put a man and a man in a room for you know, like a minute and a half, and a woman in a room for a minute and a half. Same room. Right? They could look at whatever they wanted to, and you know, and try to remember whatever was in that room. Okay, and then when they got out, they started asking the men and you know, the man what was in the room and the woman what was in the room, and they saw different things in the room. The woman saw things that had to do more with time. She focused on the calendar. She focused on the clocks. She focused on the organization of the desk. Okay. The men noticed the picture that was on the calendar, not what was written. Okay. The man looked at the colors of the pens, not the organization of the pens. The man looked at, all these different things. Okay. And they were trying to say, well, part of that was because the woman, it wants to be more organized. She's got to run a household. She's got to, blah, blah, blah. So she was looking at all of those things associated with that. The man was looking at the stuff from, I've got to get stuff done. What am I going to use with the pen? What pens do I have at my disposal to get things done? What am I going to do? Right. And then the picture was simply because men tend to be more spatially oriented than women. Okay. I saw that in college. Couldn't say anything about it, but I saw it in college when we were taking our classes in college. The freshman year of college, what you have to do is you have to take a mechanical drafting class, right? And the very few women, because there weren't very many women in engineering at that time, the very few women that were in that class had one heck of a time taking a flat piece of picture that had a drawing on it and trying to figure out what that was in 3D. They could not put it back together again and figure out what it was in 3D. You take a box and open it up flat. They could not figure out how to put that back together to make a box. You'd say, what shape is this? I don't know. Square? No, it's got like 8 sides here and 12 sides there, so it's probably not a square. They're just not spatial. Okay, anyway, men and women don't see the same way. Step point 2. Female babies like faces. Male babies like moving objects. So there's even a difference from being a baby that's not learned. Okay? So point 3. Females can verbally express their emotions better than males. Duh. Why is that? That's undoubtedly so that they can do what I was saying, tell their husbands what makes them happy, what makes them sad. How is a husband, what can the husband do to fulfill them better? That's how they explain their emotions, right? Men don't do that, Men are either happy or sad. There's like no in between. So point 4. Boys naturally use movement to think. Girls think better in a sedentary environment. I think anyone that's been a teacher can probably tell you that. Boys get restless. They get moving. They're constant. They're a problem. You can't keep them sitting for very long and to have to learn. That's something that has to be taught. Girls will sit down and you start teaching them, and they'll sit there until you're done. Okay. There was a junior high school in Chandler that was run actually by our Melissa and I's former music teacher. He went off and got his degree in administration and everything, and he set up his school where he had all boy classes and all girl classes. I was surprised that parents even let him do that, but he did that. And because he had the studies that proved that boys and girls learn differently. And you can't put them in the same room, especially in junior high, and teach them the same way. It's not effective to either one of them. Continue the point. So, not point. So point 5. Boys are more likely to take risks which can be associated with the fact that they're created to be protectors. when I was growing up. I had brothers, you know, and there were girls in the neighborhood and boys in the neighborhood, and it was always the boys that were saying dumb things like, "Yeah, I'll jump off that roof onto a mattress. That'd be cool." Right? Yeah. I'll do it once, see what it feels like. Right? Yeah. Girls are like, "You're stupid." Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'll hit that 22 with a hammer. Okay. 6, females are easier to startle. That's associated, of course, with their response. They're tied to being a responder. As such, they're easier to startle. That's why, interestingly enough, these horror movies that are not so much on the gross part, but on the startling part, tend to be favorites, mostly among women than men. You think it'd be the opposite, but mostly it's among women that they get that thrill out of being startled. You know, ooh, when that face jumps out of the sand or whatever, the hand reaches up and grabs that woman's ankle, all that stuff. You know, guys are like, women are like, ooh, that's cool, right? Subpoint 7. This is going to be very closely tied to subpoint 5. Subpoint 7. Males are more likely to die from an accident than females. See the part that says they're more risk takers. They're too. What's that? Yeah. No, they just tend to take more risks. Males do. You know, the classic line is there's two phrases that usually precede every accident in a male. Right. The first one's, "Here, hold my beer," and the second one is, "Wow, look at this." Okay, subpoint 8. Males are more likely to exhibit aggression physically, while females are more likely to exhibit aggression verbally. Now, if you stop and think about this one, that makes sense too. Women who are responders respond to the verbal insults a lot more than men do, right? It gets them out of fellowship if you're a believer. It gets them into where they're responding on their emotion. When women start calling each other names or start, doing the verbal attack. Men, you can attack verbally and it's not going to bother them, but and women, it's not going to bother them for the physical part, because why? Because physical pain, they have a higher tolerance. Men, you go smacking men and, that's because men know that that's what bothers men, right? They attack physically. I'm going to break his nose. I'm going to break his jaw. I'm going to do whatever, right? I'm not going to, speak derogatorily about his mother, right? Or say that he had a bad hair day, right? Women, on the other hand, they attack verbally. So point 9. Men are easier to sexually arouse than women. I'm not going to comment on that one. Number 10. And these you have to look at. These have been studied. They've been studied not only here, but they've been studied in other cultures. Okay, so all of these are coming across. These studies are coming across from different cultures as well. That's why we have the evolutionary anthropologists, right? They're studying not only civilized, societies like ours, quote unquote, but they have the third world and the uncivilized societies of tribes and tribals. Okay. And that's why I'm saying, the reason I'm saying this, because number 10 is universally almost, okay, seen. So number 10, men pursue and women are pursued. And that's why the Amazons were such a interesting characteristic, because they were the reverse, but they were the only ones that were, you know, thought of as being the reverse, where the women pursued the men. So point 11, this is the last one. God made men with 10 times the testosterone of women. This physiologically leads to a desire to lead and be dominant. He made women with progesterone, it's Progesterone, and estrogen, to have and nurture children. And there's a lot of other areas, but that was just a few. I stopped at 11. Obviously, we are different. And the physiological differences are also associated with the differences of the soul. And they're biblical. So subpoint F. The difference between man and woman is God made, period. They are different. So they can function properly in God's plan as right man and right woman, comma. And they are different so they can properly develop a family, etc. So if you think about the angelic conflict and the fact that man was created to resolve the angelic conflict, that meant that there had to be men, and there had to be women, there had to be families, there had to be, we had to grow. Remember, God sent us forth to multiply, okay? The idea was to have families. See, that's the stumbling block that society can't get over, is the fact that same-sex marriages can't have families. And for us, that's our one hope, right? Jesus Christ controls history, and I should say it as our one hope. But the idea, though, is the fact that, you look at it, you go, maybe they'll die out. It doesn't seem to be that way yet. Yeah, but the idea, though, is that we have families. Right man, right woman. Remember the different functions of your, first you, then your you and your mate, and then the family, and then the nation. The nation has to be created out of people, and people can only come from families. Okay, So that's why God made us different. And this is what Peter is talking to when he's talking about the weaker vessel. The fact that the woman, as the weaker vessel, needs to be filled by the strength of the man, and it needs to be filled by she's not fulfilled unless she's with her right man. Point 6. Next, we note that Peter included the phrase, quote, to a feminine one, period, end quote. This emphasizes the difference between the man and the woman. In this verse, Peter has used, quote, aner, that's A-N-E-R, end quote. Or a special man, slant husband. And contrasts it with gunaikaios. That's G-U-N-A-I-K-E-I-O-S. Gunaikaios. Gunaikaios, or feminine. So he contrasts aner with gunaikaios, meaning he contrasts husband, okay, and manliness with feminine. Husbands are to be men, and wives are to be feminine. We should never have to apologize for being this way. Or stating this dogmatically when asked. These are ready for point 7. In point 7, we're going to be talking about honor and esteem. Okay, we're going to be talking about the next phrase where the man is supposed to honor the wife, right? And what we're going to see is a couple outcomes when this doesn't work, right? You know, Nadine and I were talking during the break, and that's exactly the point that Peter's bringing out here, is that if the husband doesn't honor the wife, then all kinds of things are go wrong. And if the wife doesn't respect the husband, then these things go wrong. And it's the result. I mean, it is the key reason that we have the divorce rates that we have. Right? And we were talking about how in the past, society, if you had a wrong man, wrong woman relationship, or you had an improperly functioning right man, right woman relationship, society would force the relationship to work. Or they would have to stay together because there was the stigma associated with divorce. Okay? Nowadays, there's no stigma associated with that, and there's no teaching associated with right man, right woman. Okay? And so consequently, what happens is our divorce rate goes up. People, what Nadine was saying and pointing out was people in our generation, okay, are now starting to, and after being married for 30 years or 40 years, are now starting to divorce. Because, oh, gee, I guess I realized I was I was with the wrong person. And, oh, gee, I don't have any Bible doctrine to fix that, so I guess I'm just going to divorce and go look for something else. I'm not happy. I'm not what? My vessel is not fulfilled. Okay. It's not filled properly. Okay. But anyway, there's a lot of information there, so I'm going to stop a little bit early, even though I just chattered to the right time. Okay. If you stand, we're going to go ahead and end with a song and a prayer.